We had negotiations with the mayor. We had the language of the bill and the language of the law itself. And I can tell you that what was intended was the following. And I believe that if what was intended had actually been followed by this mayor and this chancellor, a lot of the angst and a lot of the upset that people are feeling, feelings of being powerless, of having no voice, no input, if they had actually followed the law, I think things would have been different. We set out to have a citywide Board of Education with real power. Not necessarily the final decision-making, but an entity that was created to truly vet citywide issues that would be proposed by the mayor and would have to be voted on. I realized after, I guess it was a year or 2 years into mayoral control, that that wasn't going to work. When did I realize it? I realized it the day that the debate was taking place about social promotion. You remember that? And lo and behold, this citywide Board of Education that was largely made up of mayoral appointments, which was our intention, give the mayor majority appointments, but appoint good people, have them look at issues, use their own judgment, their own decision-making about whether things are good or not. So here you had a citywide Board of Education that was supposed to vet these big issues, and lo and behold, there were 3 members of that Board of Education that opposed the mayor on social promotion. So instead of doing what the mayor should have done, excuse me, what the law had anticipated, which is to go back, talk to his board, come up with something that seemed more acceptable, what did he do? He fired. He literally dismissed, with the help of the Staten Island Borough President, because one appointment was from Staten Island, he dismissed 3 members of the board and appointed 3 people who would vote his way, and social promotion then was enacted into law. I realized then, there and then, that what we had intended, and the mayor knew very well what we had intended with respect to the citywide Board of Education, this wasn't going to work. It wasn't working, and it wasn't going to work. And if anything, over these last 4 or 5 years, things have only gotten worse, and the citywide Board of Education has been relegated to a totally unimportant role. It is there really in name only. The same is largely true for local school governance. People are surprised when they are told and they discover the legislature never abolished the 32 community school districts. The way the mayor and Chancellor Klein administered their powers and went about their business in running the system, you would think that the 32 community school districts didn't exist anymore, when in fact they always were supposed to exist, differently to some extent, but still as places where real decision-making and real help could be found for parents and local communities. The mayor tried to, he knew he couldn't in fact abolish the school boards because they existed in law. So what did he do? First he superimposed 10 regions, and then he broke the 10 regions down to other smaller subdivisions of those regions that cut across the 32 community school district lines. He virtually closed down all the community school district offices. He tried to eliminate the district superintendents. I sued him to stop him from doing that. He believed that he had a better idea than the legislature. And he had a better idea than most everybody. The point is this. We put into place a structure that should have looked as follows. You have the mayor appoints the chancellor. The chancellor now, under the new law, appoints the 32 community school district superintendents. The 32 community 32 community school district superintendents were supposed to preside in a meaningful way over their individual school districts. And we did change the way in which the local school boards were established, the way they were comprised. We eliminated elections and we went to a largely parent-appointed board. I'll just throw this out now, because there are things I'll say in the course of this discussion that I can't say right now, because there's a lot to be said. But there are things I would have, that in hindsight now, that I would have done differently than I did in 2002. And eliminating elections for local school boards is one of the things I would do differently now, in retrospect. That, in my judgment, was the wrong decision, because once you take the real public, it doesn't matter to me whether 1% or 2% come out to vote, those are some of the arguments. Once you get rid of the notion that school board members are publicly elected and accountable to the public, you've lost a very basic part of the accountability system and the respect that the boards have. Whatever limited respect they may have had, the rest of it had gone out the window. But just in sum here, I believe that if the mayor had taken what we had given him and understood that it was important to have avenues of public input and public redress, either at the citywide level or at the local level. If he had understood that and also appreciated the fact that we set up a citywide school board for a reason, that we kept the community school districts and school boards, albeit in a different way, for a reason. What the mayor set out to do was basically take all the power that we gave him and then take the rest of the power that we didn't give him. And I think what we will need to talk about, because the law does expire. By the way, one of the things that we did that was absolutely the right thing to do, and we did this very consciously, was to put what's called a sunset provision in the law. Because unlike the decentralization law that just went on year after year after year after decade, even after it wasn't working well, because there was no automatic mechanism to review it, revise it, we purposely decided, you know what, we will put a sunset in the law after 7 years. It will require the legislature to come back and act. Now, they could extend it just the way it is. They could amend it, which is what I think they intend to do. Failure to do anything, failure to vote on something, would mean that the system reverts back to what it was prior to 2002. So that's unlikely to happen. There's likely to be a vote. There's likely to be changes made. From my way of thinking, we need more specificity about the things that we meant, and to make sure that it is much more difficult for this mayor or any future mayor to circumvent the intention of the legislature on this important issue. And there are things that I think need to be done differently, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But thank you.